Those comments by JD Vance are disgraceful and just plain stupid.
When Adam Schiff drags someone, he doesn't raise his voice. He just sits there, calm as ever, and makes you feel like you brought a rubber knife to a gunfight. His latest target was none other than Vice President JD Vance. Yes, the man who once wrote a memoir about struggling in rural Ohio now struggles to understand basic decency. Vance recently took time out of his busy schedule of pretending to care about working-class people to say that childless cat ladies shouldn't have a say in American politics. Yep, that's a real thing, he said. JD looked at millions of women and thought, what if I insulted all of them in one go? Now, if you're enjoying this already, don't forget to like the video, hit subscribe, and maybe even comment on your favorite JD Vance moment, if you can find one that doesn't end in national embarrassment. Because once JD opened his mouth and said the quiet part out loud, Adam Schiff calmly stepped up and delivered what can only be described as a verbal colonoscopy. Schiff didn't yell. He didn't snark. Vance's remarks turned them into a flaming heap of political regret. And what followed was the most graceful political gutting you've ever seen.
Previously, he's even gone so far as to call her one of the childless cat ladies who's miserable with her life and has no direct stake in America because she's not a mother. How low do you think they're going to go? I mean, the bar is pretty low already, obviously.
Those comments by JD Vance are disgraceful and just plain stupid. And these attacks on the Vice President for being somehow for being somehow unqualified to be president. She's the Vice President of the United States. She's the former senator from the largest state of the union, the former attorney general from the largest state of the union, a former prosecutor. It is hard to find someone better qualified in our history to become president. So those attacks are what Republicans do, I suppose, when their candidate and his prior experience is being a business fraudster, a sexual offender, someone who rips off his own charity, a convicted criminal, reality TV star become president. That's his resume. I will take Kamala Harris's resume any day of the week.
Now, if JD Vance ever writes a sequel to Hillbilly Elegy, it should be called How to Butcher the Constitution in 30 seconds or less. Because when RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, and Kash Patel were all floated as cabinet picks, JD decided to dust off his lawyer voice and jump to their defense by boldly declaring that the Senate has no right to block any of Trump's decisions. You know, because democracy is just a pesky inconvenience. According to him, the Senate's role is to smile, nod, and hand out cabinet positions like party favors. No checks, no balances, just vibes. According to Vance, the president has spoken, and the Senate should sit down, shut up, and let the reality show cast run the country. It was the political equivalent of a toddler slapping a My Rules sticker on the Constitution and calling it legal precedent. Because in JD's world, checks and balances are just obstacles getting in the way of Trump's divine mission, like ethics, logic, or a functioning frontal lobe. But then came Adam Schiff. Calm, composed, and holding the actual Constitution, you know, the book JD Vance keeps quoting but clearly hasn't read. Schiff took one look at Vance's interpretation and responded like a teacher reading a kindergartner's attempt at Supreme Court jurisprudence. So while JD Vance is out here treating Senate confirmations like a formality that should just rubber stamp Trump's friends, Adam Schiff calmly reminded him that the Constitution still exists, and that advice and consent doesn't mean nod and shut up. Schiff just gave the nation a quick civics lesson and made JD look like he failed Law 101 in the process.
RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel.
The president has made his selections, and the advice and consent power of the United States Senate should not be used to block people. You don't get to make these decisions. President Trump gets to make these decisions, and he already has.
That ain't true, what you just saw. I don't pretend to be a constitutional scholar, but I did go to law school. I have studied the Constitution. And nowhere in this document will you find the Senate shall, when the president nominates a cabinet member, advise the president, and if you don't like it, go yourself. It's simply not to be found anywhere in here, and I would think JD Vance, having come from the Senate, would know better. Why does Congress have a role in the appointment process when it comes to cabinet people? We are supposed to be a check. Otherwise, you have people who are completely unelected, these cabinet officers, who exercise enormous influence on our life.
Yes, the Munich Security Conference is a place for diplomacy and global cooperation, and apparently, JD Vance is trying to start a Cold War reboot with extra smugness. So there's Vance, standing at the podium like he's about to announce the new flavor of Monster Energy. And what does he do? He lectures European leaders. Not just talk to them, lecture them. Because when you think of global expertise, you obviously think of JD Vance, the man who argued that childless people shouldn't make decisions, and now thinks he's qualified to scold NATO allies like they forgot their homework. Adam Schiff, bless him, took a break from being one of the last functioning adults in the Senate and gave the response we were all thinking. While the world is watching Ukraine fight for its life, JD Vance was out here giving the Kremlin a standing ovation with his mouth. Adam Schiff called it what it was, a disappointing, condescending address that did more to boost morale in Moscow than in Brussels. Because while Europe was hoping for strength and solidarity, JD brought smugness and a half-baked foreign policy.
What do his comments reveal about the Trump administration and our commitment to NATO?
They were really shocking and so disappointing when what I think our allies needed to hear was a renewed commitment by America to NATO, to our European partners, a willingness to stand up to the Kremlin and make sure that we provide Ukraine with all of the help that it needs to fight this war of aggression by Russia. But instead, what Europe got was a lecturing, a condescension, a demeaning speech that really, I think, just attacked our allies. It was greeted, I think, enthusiastically in one place, and that was the Kremlin. Exactly the wrong message right now.
While JD Vance was busy cosplaying as a constitutional expert on X, tweeting something about judges being illegal if they dare to do their jobs, Adam Schiff calmly stepped in and handed him a legal reality check. Schiff didn't need to yell. He didn't even need a meme. Just one sentence. JD, we both went to law school. That's the political equivalent of saying, bless your heart, right before dismantling someone's entire argument with Civics 101. Schiff then hit him with something JD seems to struggle with: common sense. Ignoring court decisions you don't like isn't some bold constitutional stance. It's lawlessness dressed up as patriotism. And the only oath that matters here? The one to the Constitution, not the one to Trump's Truth Social updates. And Schiff's mic drop moment? We just have to swear an oath to the Constitution and mean it. Which, clearly, Vance did neither. Adam Schiff didn't mince words after stepping off the plane and reading the headlines. What he saw from President Trump and Vice President JD Vance during their Oval Office meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky wasn't just disappointing, it was an absolute disgrace. Calling it the most shameful display by a U.S. president in his lifetime, Schiff invoked the memory of the greatest generation, the Americans who bled and sacrificed for democracy and global stability. All that, he said, was spat on in one Oval Office meeting. For Schiff, this wasn't just a bad look, it was a betrayal of everything America claims to stand for. The image of Zelensky, a leader of a war-torn democracy, being cornered in what felt more like a mob negotiation than a diplomatic meeting, was enough to make Schiff question if this is what America has become: a global bully with no moral compass. He asked the question many are thinking: if the president and his vice president won't stand up for American values, then who will? Schiff's answer was clear: Congress. Because when the executive branch trades principles for power plays, someone still has to act like an adult in the room.
So I literally just got off the plane and, of course, read all the clips about what just took place in the Oval Office. I can't think of a more shameful display by a president of the United States in my lifetime. And when I think about all that the greatest generation did, the values that it fought for, when I think of what the country has stood for since, how we have defended democracy around the world, how we have come to the aid of our allies and friends, to see that all so shamefully betrayed is just heartbreaking. What will it take to awake the conscience of this country? Is this now what America is? We are reduced to some kind of a extortionary protectionist racket where a leader of a country whose citizens have fought and died valiantly standing up to a Kremlin dictator is so abused, where we stand for nothing but using our might to extort the weak or the vulnerable? Is this where we are right now? Because this is what we witnessed in the Oval Office today. Decades of hard work and sacrifice by our parents and grandparents, all to be betrayed in such a tawdry fashion. If the President of the United States won't defend American allies and friends and interests, then the Congress needs to step up and do our damn job.
Adam Schiff doesn't let a single opportunity slip by. He didn't need many words to land a punch, just a screenshot and a reminder that JD Vance isn't the only one allergic to accountability. Steve Garvey, apparently taking notes from JD's How to Be Spineless in Politics playbook, has declined to assign any responsibility to Trump for the January 6th insurrection. The man who told a mob to fight like hell just gets a shrug. And JD Vance? He's probably somewhere nodding proudly, maybe polishing his Vice President of Excuses nameplate. Because if there's one thing JD's consistent about, it's bending over backwards to defend Trump, no matter how absurd the situation. A violent assault on democracy? JD calls that passion. Court rulings? He calls those optional. The Constitution only counts when it fits his narrative. Schiff calling him out was a public service. Adam Schiff could be talking about climate change, traffic laws, or what he had for breakfast. And somehow he'd still manage to drag JD Vance into it. And honestly, we're here for it. Because JD keeps giving him reasons. In this case, Schiff used Garvey's silence on January 6 to draw a broader point about a troubling pattern in today's GOP, where figures like JD Vance not only excuse the inexcusable, but actively distort the law to defend it. The other day, JD Vance said Taylor Swift is too rich and too out of touch to influence average Americans, which is a bold take coming from the running mate of Donald Trump. If being wealthy and disconnected disqualifies someone from relating to the public, has JD Vance met his own ticket? Adam Schiff couldn't help but highlight the irony. It's almost like Vance forgot who he's campaigning with. Swift, for all her fame, writes songs that resonate with millions. Trump, meanwhile, ran a reality show and now uses his political rallies the same way, for attention and applause. The idea that Swift's success somehow makes her unqualified to speak on politics is just weak. Americans aren't confused by celebrities, they're tired of hypocrisy. And if we're judging who's out of touch, let's compare tour schedules and tax returns. Maybe JD just doesn't like being upstaged by a woman with more fans and better approval ratings. From brushing off January 6th like it was a mild weather event to calling Taylor Swift too out of touch while standing next to Donald Trump, JD Vance keeps proving he's not just confused, he's committed to it. It wasn't enough that he downplayed an insurrection or took swings at pop stars with higher approval ratings than most world leaders. No, he had to add foreign policy disaster to his growing resume. Whether it's lecturing NATO allies or disgraceful remarks about childless ladies, JD Vance seems determined to remind us all, he's not here to lead, he's here to trend, for all the wrong reasons. With this, we wrap up another video. And if you enjoyed this, you will love our other video on Mitch McConnell.